Hello everyone. Today we're bringing you a shocking discovery. Something that just appeared in the Atacama Desert has left experts in shock. Before we dive into this fascinating discovery, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and follow us for more amazing content. Let's get started. The Atacama Desert in northern Chile is not simply a desert. It is the driest place on Earth, a geological wasteland where, in some areas, precipitation has never been recorded. Its extreme sterility, mimicking the conditions on Mars, has made it a testing ground for NASA and a natural laboratory for astrobiologists. However, in 2014, a discovery in its arid vastness shocked the scientific community, not by revealing extraterrestrial life, but by revealing a secret of human history of unexpected cruelty and antiquity, a discovery that shocked experts and forced a re-evaluation of the scale of past crimes. The shock came not from a pyramid or a lost city, but from the discovery of hundreds of naturally mummified bodies in mass graves dug in the sand. The story begins with a team of Chilean and American scientists, led by archaeologist Gonzalo Pardo, who were not looking for tombs, but for geological samples to study the effects of climate change in the Atacama, south of the city of Iquique. In a remote area known for its ancient burial grounds, the geologists stumbled upon a series of shallow depressions that seemed unnatural. At first, they were thought to be remains of illegal mining activity or modern burials. However, upon carefully excavating the first pit, scientists encountered a gruesome reality. Beneath the thin layer of sand, the Atacama's hyper-arid climate had worked its preservation magic. What emerged was layer upon layer of human bodies piled disrespectfully and disorganized, which the desert had transformed into natural mummies. The initial shock was the sheer number. The area, which stretched for several kilometers, contained a number of remains that far exceeded any known cemetery in the region. The second and more profound shock was the evidence of violence and suffering. The mummies had not died of natural causes. Forensic experts and anthropologists found unmistakable signs of severe trauma, fractures, penetrating wounds, and signs of torture. The mass graves bore silent witness to a massacre or execution on a massive scale. The third shock was the chronology. Initially, due to the shocking nature of the finds and Chile's recent political history, there was speculation that the bodies might belong to victims of Pinochet's dictatorship in the 1970s. However, radiocarbon dating tests yielded a result that completely baffled experts. The bodies dated to the late 19th century, in the context of the brutal and bloody War of the Pacific, 1879 to 1884, which pitted Chile against Peru and Bolivia. The discovery wasn't just an archaeological find, it was a lost and deliberately hidden piece of military history. These bodies belonged to soldiers or, more likely, civilians, captured and executed during the military occupation campaigns that ravaged northern Chile, then a disputed territory. The Atacama mummies became physical evidence of war atrocities that hadn't been documented in official historical records, a secret the sand had guarded for 130 years. Forensic analysis of the mummified remains revealed gruesome details. The natural preservation of the Atacama Desert was so perfect that pathologists were able to examine the soft tissue, skin, and even stomach contents of some of the victims. This level of detail allowed scientists to determine the exact causes of death and, in some cases, the time period between injury and death, painting a vivid and horrific picture of these individuals' final moments. What emerged in the Atacama Desert was a direct confrontation with historical memory. The existence of these mass graves reopened debates about the conduct of war in the 19th century and the historical responsibility of the sites. The shock for experts was twofold: the cruelty revealed by the bodies and the historical silence that had covered the massacre. The desert, the great denier of time, had become an involuntary denouncer. The study of clothing and artifacts found with the mummies provided further clues. Some bodies wore woolen clothing indicating an origin in the Bolivian or Peruvian highlands, suggesting that the victims were indigenous people and civilians caught in the conflict or captured. This finding added an ethnic dimension to the tragedy, implying that the atrocities were not only committed against combatants, but against populations considered enemies because of their origin or affiliation. The Atacama Desert, with its extreme dryness, had acted as a forensic time capsule. Unlike skeletal remains, which provide only an incomplete picture, natural mummies gave scientists a complete narrative of the violence. The sand and salinity had halted decomposition, preserving evidence of the crime with a clarity that experts rarely see in forensic archaeology. The interdisciplinary investigation that followed was monumental, bringing together archaeologists, forensic scientists, historians, and geologists. The goal was not only to unearth the bodies, but to identify the victims and reconstruct the exact historical context of the massacre. The Atacama, the place where life struggles to exist, had returned an archive of death that demanded historical justice. The discovery in Atacama became a global example of how forensic archaeology can intervene in contemporary history and uncover the darkest secrets of past conflicts, even when official memory has failed. The experts' shock transformed into an ethical determination to give voice to those silenced by the desert. The Atacama Desert has revealed that, even in the driest place, the memory of injustice can be preserved. The natural mummification of bodies in the Atacama Desert is a scientific phenomenon that, while well known, continues to amaze experts with its effectiveness. The combination of hyperaridity, high soil salinity, and natural ventilation created a preservation environment that dehydrated the bodies before decomposition could occur. This chemistry of death was key to the desert providing such a detailed forensic record. If you're amazed by what's been discovered in the Atacama Desert, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us. There's still so much more to discover about this enigmatic place. Scientists performed stable isotope analyses on the mummy's bones and hair, which allowed them to determine the victims' diet and geographic origin. The results confirmed that many of them were not local coastal inhabitants, but rather people from the Andean highlands, Peru or Bolivia, who ate a diet based on quinoa and tubers. This data reinforces the theory that the victims were dragged into the desert as prisoners of war or civilian victims of reprisals. Another aspect that shocked experts was the evidence of haste and negligence in the burial. The bodies were not arranged in ritual or even uniform positions. They were thrown and piled haphazardly in the graves. This indicates that the execution was a massive and rapid act, carried out by personnel who did not intend to provide a respectful burial, but rather to hide the evidence of an atrocity. The desert, however, refused to cooperate with oblivion. The discovery forced historians to take a closer look at military archives from the War of the Pacific. Although official records are notoriously incomplete or biased, the physical discovery provided irrefutable proof that summary executions and massacres of civilians were common practice during this phase of the conflict, a chapter that Chilean nationalist history had preferred to minimize or ignore. Forensic archaeology in the Atacama Desert set a precedent for the study of 19th-century war crimes in South America. Shock became a tool for truth-telling, demonstrating that even the driest land preserves the memory of injustice with astonishing fidelity. The Atacama Desert was transformed from a geological landscape to a site of historical memory. The preservation of the mummy's skin and facial features, although wrinkled and darkened by the mummification process, allowed scientists to create facial reconstructions in some cases. This effort was undertaken in the hope that indigenous communities and descendants of the victims would be able to recognize the remains, offering the possibility of individual identification and historical closure for families affected by the conflict of 130 years ago. The Atacama Desert provided a final testament to the human cost of the War of the Pacific, a cost largely borne by vulnerable populations and silenced by time and sand. Science and the desert's extreme nature came together to unravel the secret and compel a reconciliation with a brutal past. What most impacted experts and society at large was the ethical transformation of the remains. The Atacama mummies were not simply archaeological artifacts from the pre-Columbian past. They were victims of a recent crime whose context still resonates in the region. This distinction was fundamental to the handling of the remains, which were treated with a protocol of forensic human rights archaeology rather than traditional excavation. Analysis of the clothing revealed details about the victims' daily lives before their execution. Scientists found evidence of repairs, patches, and worn fabrics, suggesting that the victims were not elite, but rather humble, hard-working people. The Atacama Desert was telling the story of the forgotten and voiceless of the war. The logistical challenge of excavating in the hyper-arid desert environment was immense. The team of archaeologists had to work under extreme conditions of daytime heat and nighttime cold, ensuring the preservation of the bodies in the short time between disinterment and transfer to the laboratory. The very nature of the desert became an active factor in the narrative of the excavation. The discovery of the mass graves sparked a political and academic debate about archaeological looting. The Atacama region is rich in pre-Columbian remains, and the military graves were located near ancient Chinchorro cemeteries. Scientists had to carefully differentiate the remains, using dating as the dividing line between ancient archaeology and modern forensic archaeology. The legacy of what emerged in the Atacama Desert is the power of scientific evidence to dismantle historical myths and demand the truth. The initial shock at the discovery of the war mummies has become a call to action for historical reconciliation and recognition of the victims of 19th century violence. The Atacama, the driest place on Earth, has shed a tear of history that the world cannot ignore. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of what has been discovered in the Atacama Desert. This inhospitable but fascinating place, known as one of the driest deserts in the world, has revealed surprising discoveries that challenge our understanding of history. From ancient remains of civilizations that once inhabited this region to mysterious artifacts that could shed light on their customs and traditions, each discovery brings us closer to understanding how they adapted to this extreme environment. If you enjoyed this post, give it a like, subscribe, and follow us so you don't miss our next videos full of revelations and surprises. Each week, we'll take you to new corners of the world where history and science intertwine, unearthing secrets that have remained hidden for centuries. See you next time. We're excited to continue this journey of discovery with you and explore together the rich and varied cultural heritage the world has to offer. Don't miss it.